Hello, everyone. This is Kellyn and I was nominated for the Ice Bucket Challenge by my friend Peggy King. I'm not actually going to do the Ice Bucket Challenge, and I know you're all devastated by that. You wanted to see me get all wet by lovely little bucket here, but it's not going to happen. I thought about this for quite some time, but after thinking about it, I decided that I was going to do this a little bit different. I am definitely making my check out to ALS. It's not about getting soaked. It's not about having a bucket of water put on top of my head and, in front of a video. It's about autoimmune. It's about this. I am the board. We joke about it. We know how this goes, but it's not really that funny. If I were to do this challenge, I would be in pain for days. I wouldn't be able to perform some of the duties for my work, and I wouldn't be able to care for my family, and that's kind of a big deal. I didn't want to take anything away from this wonderful cause. I think it's fantastic. But I want people to start thinking about more than just the ALS challenge, but also that there are a set of diseases that are classed and identified as unique that are actually one. I don't suffer from the debilitating disease of ALS, but ALS does have something in common with this topic, and it's called autoimmune, just like what I suffer from autoimmune. Autoimmune is a life-altering and often debilitating disease to those it strikes. ALS has a component and a connection to autoimmune. They just don't know what it is at this time. They're still investigating it. They just realize that ALS sufferers do test positive very often for autoimmune, to the point that it's not a coincidence. Autoimmune is a strange topic. You've probably never heard of it before, or it's been just in passing. When you talk about your immunity, you suffer from a cold virus or bacteria and a thorn or, a sliver in your finger, your immune system comes in and it protects you. It tries to identify, kill, and eliminate that invader that, it's going to hurt you. Autoimmune is when your immune system causes it to mistake your body, your own healthy cells, as invaders, and it repeatedly attacks them. It is very devastating, and sometimes it's very fatal. I can't even count how many times I've spoken to somebody who's suffering from an autoimmune illness and they aren't even aware that it's autoimmune. Unlike cancer, we don't identify each of them as connected. Autoimmune is identified by almost 100 separate diseases right now. So if you start talking about the sufferers of this, there are 24 million people who suffer from autoimmune in America. This includes 400,000 sufferers of multiple sclerosis who slowly become paralyzed. Autoimmune sufferers of organ, joint pain, inflammation, again, often fatal, but just even with constant flu-like symptoms, that's 1.5 million sufferers of lupus. There are over 1 million Americans that suffer from the often deadly Crohn's disease. That's an intense intestinal affliction of the autoimmune. I look at my father's hands. I see how they're all bent out of shape and how his tendencies for RA just let me know that rheumatoid arthritis runs in my family. My mother is classified into another group similar to I am. These are people that their autoimmune is constantly changing. Some stay the same, some constantly change, and that's when you realize that autoimmune is extremely connected. And they're classified and re-diagnosed. She is more of a lupus type, now rheumatoid. I started out with what was called neurovascular lupus in my 20s when I had strokes, and then moved to a more rheumatoid disease type, which is what this is, with my spine and my wrists and elbows and joints. After I had children, while I was having children, I actually went into remission, and 10 years after my strokes was when it came back and was all in my joints. When we look at these numbers separately, 400,000, 1 million, they may not seem that impacting, but when we start talking about 24 million Americans that are impacted by this, that's a pretty devastating number. That's pretty astounding. But if you ask around 90% of Americans, they can't even name one autoimmune disease. They may suffer from one. They may have a family member that does. They don't understand it because it's not out there in the public. We don't realize we're affected. There's often a hereditary component that's part of this. My oldest he's autoimmune positive right now, and we're watching him closely to make sure that he doesn't end up with my strokes. We watch each one of my children for that. My daughter's showing autoimmune tendencies and is about to be tested. My youngest son was diagnosed with Graves' disease when he was 2 years old. He looks physically is 3 years younger than what he chronologically is because of Graves' disease. His bones, everything did not age, even though we gave him synthetic thyroid to help him grow and to keep up with the other children. I'm going to list some autoimmune diseases, and you're going to find that you're probably impacted as well. Type 1 diabetes, lupus, Crohn's disease, multiple sclerosis, fibromyalgia, Graves, vasculitis, psoriasis, Wagner's disease, connective tissue disease, Addison's disease, celiac disease. These are for the people that are truly gluten intolerant. Their immune system won't allow them to process gluten. Scleroderma. These are all autoimmune diseases, and there's so many more. Like I said, there's almost 100 of them. Autoimmune is now the #2 cause of chronic illness in America and the 3rd leading cause of Social Security disability behind heart disease and cancer. Economic burden is staggering. Autoimmune diseases represent yearly healthcare burdens more than $120 billion versus $70 billion for direct medical costs of cancer. That's a really huge difference. You think about how impacting cancer is and how many people that I know that have family members or they themselves are impacted by cancer, how much more money goes towards autoimmune care. Autoimmune diseases are the 8th leading cause of death among women and shortens the average patient's lifespan by 15 years. To underscore these numbers and to really understand them, 2.2 million women are living with breast cancer and 7.2 million women have coronary disease. An estimated 9.8 million women are afflicted with one of the 7 most common autoimmune diseases. All of them are potentially fatal. They were impacted also by pre-existing conditions rules for insurance before Obamacare came into play, where they may not have gotten the care that they needed. They've also been impacted so that they may not be able to get life insurance outside of their work. I know I myself went through these issues as well, and it's very challenging and very terrifying. You want to slice the statistics a little different way? While 1 in 69 women below the age of 50 will be diagnosed with breast cancer, according to the estimates, as many as 1 in 9 women of childbearing years will be diagnosed with an autoimmune illness. Autoimmune is more likely to be diagnosed in women 3 times as often as for men. We start wanting to look at the U.S. and then beyond. The Mayo Clinic researchers reported that an incident of lupus has nearly tripled in the United States in the last 40 years. Their findings are all the more alarming when you consider that their actual research was conducted primarily on white populations, when they really believe that the rates are rising much more significantly among African Americans. We look at the past 50 years, multiple sclerosis has tripled in Finland. Rates have likewise been beginning to rise in Scotland, England, the Netherlands, Denmark, and Sweden. The number of people with MS have risen nearly 3% a year in those countries. Multiple sclerosis rates in Norway have risen 30% since 1963, and the trends have echoed in Germany, Italy, and Greece, where MS rates have doubled in the past 30 to 40 years. Rates of type 1 diabetes are even more telling. Data over the past 40 years show that type 1 diabetes, this is a disease in which the immune cells attack the insulin-producing beta cells in the pancreas, have increased 5-fold. Rates of numerous other diseases such as Crohn's disease, Addison disease, and others show the same alarming pattern. Specialists in Norway argue that the rising rates are due to real biological change in the disease, not just solely from better diagnostics. They've identified the autoimmune cases are increasing in urban areas more so than rural ones, and they see in Germany and Sweden, researchers have noted that enhanced diagnostics can't be the only increase and explanation for the increases in MS. With all this data, you may be asking me why I've chosen this time to discuss it. I think the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge is just phenomenal. But we need to kind of ask ourselves, what is the true value of the health of our families and our world? We give money, so much money to the pharmaceutical companies to treat these illnesses, to relieve our pain, to relieve some of our suffering. But like the ALS challenge, I want to see a cure. The more we understand about autoimmune, that is not a set of 100 separate diseases, but a connected issue, that it is a single issue that is due to complexity that has led us to diagnose separate illnesses, maybe we can create a wave of understanding that will help us to create a big picture that will lead to a cure. Knowledge is everything. Knowledge is the key. I want to thank Peggy King for nominating me, but I also want to challenge the world to understanding autoimmune and how many of us are affected.